everyone, it's the Tides Changing here, and welcome to part 6 of Let's Build a Mediterranean House. In this part, we begin landscaping the rest of the yard. In today's part, over half of the yard gets landscaped, so a lot gets done. The first thing I did was I just added a red plant to that garden next to the garage there to add a pop of color. And the next thing that I did was add the pavement in front of the garage, and I decided to go with more of a brown colored pavement rather than the traditional gray, just because I felt like that would match with the road better and with the more natural earth tones that are on this house. And I definitely think that was a good choice. It looks pretty nice in there and matches things pretty well. The next thing I'm going to do is just smooth the ground out a little bit. And next I'm going to make the pathway going from that arch area down to the street. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to put some stairs in there because I thought it would look nice to have some stairs going down the hill rather than just a straight path going down. So there you have the stairs, and now I'm just making some diagonal pavement to get it down to a 2 wide width. And I wanted to recolor those stairs to be a gray color so that they match the pavement better and didn't stand out. And now I'm just smoothing around the ground to make the hill look a little more gradual around the stairs, and also going from the stairs down to the pavement. Now I'm just adding in a terrain paint to make a path going from those stairs down to the road. And I didn't like that one. I felt like it was too busy, and I did try having the floor tile there, but the floor tile kind of flattens out the land, so it doesn't really work that well. So I ended up trying that one again and making a straight path, thinking that having it be a straight path would look better. I don't feel like that terrain paint worked very well there, though, because while it matches the terrain paint on the driveway pretty well, it just kind of clashes with the grayish floor and stairs. So I ended up going this more natural looking slate kind of path, and I really like this one just because it goes with everything so well. Like, there's barely any type of landscaping that path does not go with, and I just really like it, and I use it all the time. Now I'm adding in some trees in here. And these trees are from the store. That one is. It came with Monte Vista. And I feel kind of bad that I'm using a lot of Monte Vista stuff in here, but I really want this house to fit in perfectly with that world. And now I'm just trying to figure out a lighter grass terrain paint that goes with the terrain paint here in Monte Vista. So I just ended up picking out that lighter one that I used there. And now I'm just straightening out the ground a little bit, making it so it slopes a little bit sharper and doesn't come out so far. And now I'm lightly adding in some stone terrain paint on that hill there. And what I'm doing there is, as you can see, I have the brush as soft as it can go. And first I go over it with the brush large, so get that stone down that way. And then after I do that, and keeping it very lightly, I put it on medium brush and do it again on the edges. And then I go down to a small brush and then do it on the edges of that, just so I don't get too much stone, and it just looks very natural and very subtle, as you can see. Here I'm just adding in a rather large, I believe, chestnut tree that, once again, that's also from Monte Vista. Here I'm adding in some bushes in there under the tree, just add a little bit more decoration, make it look a little bit nicer. As you'll see with this yard, I love putting a lot of trees. I don't know why, I just love trees and put a lot of them in when I do landscaping. Here I'm just putting a few bushes in front of that building right there. With the yard of this house, I was kind of going for more of a natural look, and what I mean by that is rather than having, floor tile paths going everywhere and a lot of flower beds and objects, it's just more this one stone terrain paint path you see here going around the yard, along with a lot of trees and some ponds and gardens. So really, it's a lot of scenery rather than straight landscaping. Like, I wanted to just look like the trees were already there, the little pond was already there, and the house was just built within that, if that makes any sense. What I'm doing here is setting up the fencing that's going to go around the rest of the yard. So what I typically have been doing lately is having a half wall, and I've been putting a stone pattern that's been used in the rest of the house on that wall. And then also having that fence you see there, and I just alternate it every 2. As you can see here, I'm putting in 2 of the half walls, and then in the spaces in there I'm going to put 2 of the fences. And why I'm doing it this way is because it's just easier to put the wall paint on those half walls when you don't have the fence. So you just put it on one side and that's it. And now I'm putting the fencing in through there. And I think that that's a really nice look for the fences. Like I said, I've been doing that in a lot of my houses lately just to, border the yard. And I think it's a pretty nice look. Here I was just flattening out that land there so the hill didn't go out quite so far. And now I'm using the raise tool and kind of raising it a little bit to make it look like there's some ridges, as if it's kind of like a mountain, it's not a super smooth hill, so I'm just doing that. And now, as I said earlier, I'm going over it with the brush on large and as soft as it can be and just putting that stone terrain paint over it. So you can see I'm just kind of doing it more along the ridges, and now I have it on medium and I'm kind of going in between and putting it there as well, and now I have it on small, and I'm just adding that to the edges of it. Just so I don't accidentally make it, too much stone, just so I can keep it subtle. Here I'm going over that grass there, making it a little bit darker than it was, just to add a bit more detail to that area. Here I'm changing that stone path to have it go a little further out from the hill. And now I'm just adding in some trees there. And also a bush under it. When I put a plant into the yard, I pick a dirt terrain and I put the brush once again on the light as it can go and just lightly press under the tree just to give a subtle dirt terrain paint look. Here I'm adding in some smaller trees up on the hill there. I didn't want to put too tall plants on there since it's right next to the house, and I didn't want it to be too overwhelming, so like I said, I'm just keeping smaller trees there. Here I'm putting some rocks down to line a little flower garden that's going to go next to that house there. And I had some flower gardens, but they're all next to the house. Other than next to the house, like I said before, it's all just trees and bushes loose by themselves, pretty much. So it's mainly just around the house that you have the flower beds like this, just because, I felt like it'd be good to have that around the house. Here you can get a nice overview of how the yard is coming along. Now I'm going to make a small pond in this corner here next to the tree, just as I thought that that would be a nice way to use this area, and I just thought it would be a nice little touch. So I had the brush on light, as weak as it could be, so that it would make a pretty shallow pond, so you can still see the terrain paint on the bottom of it. And I think when you have a really small pond, it just looks a little bit better to have it to be more shallow. Now I'm just putting in a few cattail type plants in around and some rocks. And there also, just because I like to put that, and some rocks on the corners there, and just putting that dirt terrain paint, around it. Here I'm just continuing that fence a little bit further down, putting the wall paint on first and then adding in the other fence. And just putting in that plant there into that corner, as well as some dirt terrain paint underneath of that. Here I'm just going to continue that stone path around a little further, so I'm just going to bring it all the way around that hill. And I just wanted it to be a little bit closer than I had it, since I had it going kind of far out, so I wanted to keep it close to that hill to have some more space for landscaping on the edge of that yard. Now I'm just bringing that fence further down along this side. So I kind of did the fence, bit by bit, since it's just kind of tedious to make the fence. And I actually ended up only leaving one space between those fences there at the beginning, so I had to redo it. And like I said, it's a little bit tedious making the fences sometimes. Now I'm just bringing that other fence through there. It's easier to do that part than it is the other part. Here you get another nice little overview of the yard. Now I'm going to move on to putting some trees into that area there between the path and the fence. Because like I said, this yard is going to have a lot of trees. So I pretty much just filled in most of that area with some trees. Some larger trees and some smaller trees as well. Now I'm just adding that subtle dirt terrain paint in underneath of there. The next thing that I wanted to do is I put that cypress tree there just because I wanted a different tree, but sometimes I think having too many trees doesn't look too good. So I don't really like that cypress tree there very much, and I just added another one of those big chestnut trees right in there as well, just to add something on that other side of the path. Here I'm going to put in a small fire pit area, so I'm putting in this nice fire pit from Outdoor Life Stuff, as you'll see in a few seconds. So it's this one right here, this nice metal looking one that just kind of goes with the whole Monte Vista theme. And I also added some those park bench looking chairs. Now I'm just adding some rocks in behind there since I wanted to look like there was a little rock wall behind that fire pit area. So I'm just adding a bunch of rocks in there and some bushes as well to add some plant life. And some flowers as well. Now just finishing that off by adding a few more rocks in and also the dirt terrain paint. So there you just have a nice little fire pit area where, you know, 2 Sims can sit and enjoy a nice warm fire. Now you can get another nice look at how this yard is coming along. Here I'm just going to go and add some more of that rock terrain paint over to the rest of the hill over here since I didn't get to that yet. So once again, just using it on the lightest brush possible to keep it subtle. And just adding in a few more trees here. I originally put in that cypress tree there, but it's a different kind of green than the other ones, I guess. Like, it just stands out a lot, so I got rid of it. And now I'm just adding in the rocks for another little flower garden right there, you know, in front of that wall there. So I thought that would be a nice touch for that area, so I'm just putting in those longer rocks rather than using the smaller ones that I normally do. And now that those are in, I'm of course just going to put in the dirt terrain paint underneath there. And also some bushes, of course, and some flowers as well. So now that garden is pretty much done. And now I'm just going to move on from there. After that, I moved on to flattening the land right there behind the house to set up where the pool is going to be. So right there, directly in the back of the house, there's going to be a pool. And there I just brought the hill in a little bit closer. Here I'm just adjusting that path so it stays a little bit further out. And now once again adding in that stone terrain paint around. And I also decided to add in some subtle dirt terrain paint to the edges of the hills. And next I'm just bringing that fence around a little bit further. So as you can see, I already put the half wall in there, and I'll just bring the other fence. And I was experimenting with taking out some of the trees because I felt like maybe it was a bit too many trees and it was kind of busy. The next thing that I'm going to do is make a little garden in that corner right there, because since this is kind of an Italian themed house, it of course has to have a vineyard in it. So here I'm just putting in some grapes, and this house has every kind of grape that came with World Adventures. So all those French ones. So there's a lot of nice grapes for nectar making, and of course in that basement area, as I mentioned before, there will be some nectar making equipment. And since this was in the corner, you know, right there in the corner, I decided to make the plants diagonal, and here I'm just, because I thought that would be a nice design element for that garden there. And here I'm just adding in another diagonal row of grapes. Because like I said, a lot of different kinds of grapes, so there's a lot of variety. The only problem with these rare grapes, though, is that they tend to dry out quicker than other plants. Like, there's been several times where I put rare plants into a house I was building, and, you know, while I was trying to do the flyover of it, I had to wait a day for whatever reason, and then all the plants died, or it went brown, so I had to have my Sims water it, or I just kind of got lazy and tried to avoid having the plants in the shot. So that's something to keep in mind with these. I may not be right about this, but I think it doesn't really matter what their gardening skill level is. They can still water it, at least, I'm pretty sure. And now I'm just adding in some apples and limes there. I was originally thinking about taking out all these plants once I move in my Let's Play Sims, but I think I'm actually just going to keep it because I like how I arranged the garden. I don't really want to have to go in and add plants again, so you know what, they're paying for it. I'm just going to keep, you know, this little vineyard area as it is once I move them in there. So now I have all the plants that are going to be in there, and I just think that's a pretty neat design for a garden. I really like how it looks. Now I'm just adding in the rest of the fences there, bringing that a little further around. And there you can get a nice overview of the garden area. The next thing I'm going to do is do the terrain painting under it. So first what I did was I added dirt terrain paint underneath it, mainly focusing on the areas where there are plants. So that's just kind of what I'm going through and doing here, you know, making sure I get dirt underneath all of the plants. So it's kind of a tedious process. Not the most tedious thing about building, but definitely pretty tedious. So now that the dirt's underneath all of those, I'm going to take that same path terrain paint that, you know, I used, and I'm just adding it in between. So it's kind of like you have this stone path going between the plants, and then, you know, of course the plants are in dirt. And I thought that was a nice touch rather than just having it be all dirt. You know, it's a little bit of extra detail. So I'm just going through, making sure I get in between all the plants and adding that in. And now I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger and have it be that terrain paint going all the way up to where the dirt is. And now that that's done, you know, I just had to touch up a few spots where I missed it with the terrain paint. Also adding some dirt since I accidentally went over it with the stone terrain paint in a few spots, so just cleaning everything up and making it look nice. So there you have the guard, and I definitely think it's a really nice looking garden, and I'm just adding in a tree back there for a little bit of shade to make it look a little bit nicer. That is all for this part. The next one will be up on Thursday. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you aren't. Thanks for watching, and bye!